A beautiful desert landscape with sand dunes, borax mines, colored rock canyons, natural rock formations, and to the lowest part of the United States. Today we're in Death Valley National Park, and we're going to make the most of this adventure today and talk a little bit about the history of Death Valley National Park. We're going to be along Highway 190, and our first stop is going to be the Mesquite Dunes. These are the Mesquite sand dunes, and this is a very short hike. It doesn't have a direct path, so I'm just going to go walk around the sand dunes and just kind of point out how these sand dunes are formed, and I'm going to try to get to the parts where they have the least amount of brush. So once you start this hike, you're pretty much just making your own path, walking through these sand dunes, and there's a lot of brush and vegetation dug into these sand dunes. So all these sand dunes right here actually come from dirt blown away from the mountains, and it piles up onto this section right here. And beneath these sand dunes, there's actually moisture of water underneath it. And during really high temperatures of around 200 degrees or so, this is where you have life underneath these sand dunes, and we're gonna go up there, like lizards and snakes and rats as well. So we're gonna go up there. So right here is where I seen the least amount of brush and vegetation, and I love this because this reminds me a lot of Egypt and the Sahara Desert, and you can see bits of the brush dug into the sand, and right there is like a ridge. But this is just amazing. I've never seen anything like this before. And you get this nice backdrop of the mountains behind you, and you could continue on. I believe this was listed as 2.9 miles. But now we're gonna go check out the borax mines. So this is just a short walk. It's a loop, and basically it just has some of the wagons that were brought here in the late 1800s, and this was actually used to look for gold originally. They couldn't find gold, but they did find what they called white gold, which is basically borax, and it was used for household cleaning products that are still used today. So they actually brought 20 mules through here, and there's actually a borax brand called 20 Mules. So that's where it gets its name from, is the 20 mules that they use to carry these wagons into this desert. So this was actually built by William T. Coleman, a businessman from San Francisco, in 1882. So he helped build this area and helped create the borax for his own company. And our next stop is going to be the Artist Palette, which is a colorful canyon along mountains. And we did run into a local celebrity while making our way there. When you make your way to the Artist Palette, the parking lot will fill up pretty quickly, and it's essentially just an overlook of the colorful rocks that radiate throughout the desert. And it's a very short hike. It's only 0.4 miles. And this right here just talks about the palette of color. So they call it the artist palette because it looks kind of like a painting on the rocks. And you could just see all the variations of colors radiating throughout the rocks. And it looks a little bit like a sherbet ice cream or a rainbow ice cream. And that's the section where we came up through from that parking lot right there. So it's a really short hike. It's a beautiful canyon. You get all these amazing colors radiating throughout the rocks. And it's not something you see every day. So that's what makes it pretty unique. How these are formed geologically. And a huge chunk of Death Valley was actually formed from volcanic eruptions millions of years ago. But that's what makes this park very unique, is the history behind it as well. So I'm going to get a little bit closer and touch the rocks in a little bit just to kind of feel the texture of them. But there's this nice rock overlook. And you could just make your way down and walk around the canyon and admire the scenic landscapes of the desert. So this is the greenest texture that you see from a distance. And then when you get closer to it, it does have a very rocky dirt feel to it. And this one right here is a white color, and then you can see all the gold coming from the mountains. So our next stop is going to be the Natural Bridge Canyon. And you can oversee the salt water from a distance, which we're going to explore afterwards. And this is a really short hike. It's only 1.4 miles. And the Natural Bridge Canyon is pretty unique because of the natural bridge formation that is carved from the rock. And it's a really short hike. And of course you get the views of the ancient lake bed behind me. The canyon starts out pretty wide and open. And the further you get down into the canyon, you're going to see that it becomes more closed in or more narrow. And I'm going to go ahead and just touch this rock right here and just kind of feel the texture of the sand coming throughout this canyon rock. So if you touch it, this is what it feels like. It has that nice gold look that radiates throughout the sun. And the further you get down, you're going to see more rock formations and the natural carvings. And you can see the natural ridge formation from a distance. So it's actually pretty large. It doesn't look that big in the video, but in person it's really big. And you can see an opening where there could have been a waterfall. You can see that streak coming down, which is just evidence of water. And we're going to get up close to this natural bridge, and there's going to be on the side of it another opening where you could climb up through. So that opening is right here. And it's sort of like a cave / slot narrow. And you can just climb over these rocks right here. And there's another section where you could climb up. But you got to be careful and just make sure not to fall. And there's actually another opening above that spot. And you can just see more openings on the side. So it's pretty cool. And if you look closely at the side, you can see just the water streaks coming down on the right side. Just more geological evidence that there was water long ago in this canyon. And right there you could see where the ancient waterfall or dried up waterfall would have been. So I'm going to go ahead and get a little closer to this waterfall, or what was a waterfall at one time or another. So this is what it looks like when you're up close to it. And there's a streak coming down it.
It's a cave.
And there's like a cave right here on the side when you make your way to the canyon. But it's hard to get up to. So you're going to get up to this point, and you're going to have to climb up through the canyon to get to the last dry waterfall. And you can just see some of the colors in the rocks. So I'm going to go ahead and climb up here. So this is pretty neat how you just navigate your way through this. And it's pretty adventurous to have to climb over these rocks. And so I just made it from up there. And I do have a little bit more climbing to do. So when you make your way up, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to have another spot that you got to climb up. Go underneath that rock. You can see all these nice different textures of the color of the rocks coming down. And this is where the pool used to be, as well as the waterfall that poured down into this pool. So now we're going to head to the lowest part of the United States, the Badwater Basin. And it starts out as a boardwalk, but if you just look at this, it looks like an ancient ocean. So this hike gets pretty crowded, but there still is water in this portion, and we are below sea level. And you could just see the salt coming through the ground, all that white stuff. And it's just all over the ground. And this is just what's left of this ancient waterbed that used to be here. So this is pretty unique and pretty different. To think, millions of years ago, this was an ocean. And you could just see all the water. And you could just walk through it. And if you look at a map, it's not even listed as being a lake. It's not even marked in blue. So this was Death Valley National Park. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.